Good afternoon, everyone. This is Udayakumar, Secretary, Renewable Club of Chennai Sunshine. The focus of this noon's program is the alternative energy or the renewable energy, which is the need of the hour. This program is carried out by the secretaries of the clubs of Innerville District 323 under the able guidance of a program advisor, PDC Sushina Traj, and the program coordinator, District Secretary Aarti Narayan. We'll begin with the Innerville prayer read by Tara Gopinath, Secretary, Innerville Club of Madras Estimate. Please raise your right hand when the prayer is read.
Instill in us, O Lord, the true meaning of friendship. Never let us forget that we are all thy children, notwithstanding the differences in our culture and creed. Endow us with desire to serve our fellow men, remembering that we too often need help. Whenever and wherever the need for service arises, help me to be ready to serve, endeavoring to make our badge of inner wheel worthwhile, ensuring that we have not lived in vain.
Thank you, Tara. Yesha Galaga, Secretary, Innerville Club of Madras Next Gen, will formally welcome the gathering.
Honor to welcome you all to this awareness session on alternative energy conducted by the secretaries of clubs of Innerville District 323. I am Yesha Kalada from Innerville Club of Madras Next Gen. Firstly, I would like to welcome our district chairman, Ms. Usha Sarauji, our PDC, Ms. Sushi Natraj, our district secretary, Ms. Aarti Narayan, and all my other fellow club secretaries. A special welcome to our honorable panelists, Mr. Ramani, Mr. Subramanian, and Mr. Udayakumar, who have come to share their knowledge and experience. A big welcome to our district executive committees, PIIWP Kamala Ramakrishnan, PIIWT Alagu Anamalai, and other past district chairmen and all members of Innerville. A very warm welcome to everyone who has joined us today from various places. Your support and presence gives us great joy and confidence. I would like to start this program by saying gaining knowledge is the first step to wisdom, and sharing it is the first step to humanity. Thank you.
Thank you, Yesha. I now request the program coordinator, District Secretary Aarti Narayanan, to brief us on the concept of alternative energy and the initiative as well.
Thank you, Usha. District Chairman Usha Sarauji, Program Advisor PDC Sushi Natraj, esteemed speakers Mr. Ramani, Mr. Udayakumar, Mr. Subramanian Hariharan, members of the District Executive Committee, past International Innerville President Kamala Ramakrishnan, past International Innerville Treasurer Arago Anamale, past District Chairman, Presidents, Secretaries, Treasurers, ISOs, and members of the clubs of Innerville District 323 and guests. Good afternoon. Energy can neither be created nor destroyed, but sources of energy can certainly be depleted, making conservation an imperative. It is in this context that it would be prudent to conserve existing resources, even as we look for alternative sources of energy. There is no going back to flintstones and firewood, as humanity has come a long way ahead. As human beings then, responsible consumption of energy is a prime requisite. Judicious use of all of nature's bounty, which includes sun, wind, water, earth, is compulsory even as we allow fossil fuels to replenish themselves. Fossil fuels have tremendous negative impact on health and environment. India has the potential of having higher positive health and environmental impact from renewable energy transitions. I'd like to showcase here the energy transitions that India has announced in the last 5 months. Indian technology has developed to the extent wherein solar-powered boats are ferrying people and conducting oceanographic surveys, offering an indigenous alternative to expensive foreign technology. Studies have shown that renewable energy is more profitable than fossil fuels, having a faster return on capital with a modest capital investment compared to fossil fuel plants, which take more than a decade to construct, leading to massive expenses with high variability in cost of fuel. Clean energy also empowers women. Studies showcase that women and girls are more exposed to domestic use of unclean energy, which impacts their access to education. Therefore, gender equity involves clean energy. Thus, renewable energy gives us an opportunity not to exploit, but to safeguard the earth and humanity. Teamwork is essential in putting this program together, and with a team of 51, we could do no wrong. This program has been initiated with the thought of not only creating awareness, but to convert this knowledge into action in our endeavor to create a positive impact on climate change and the environment. PDC Sushi Natraj, as the program advisor, has been the backbone of this venture, and we owe it to her for going into minute details in ensuring the smooth functioning and success of this program. Thank you, ma'am. The teamwork amongst the secretaries has been astounding. The secretaries were divided into groups. The survey group conducted an online survey in the month of October to gauge the understanding of the concept of renewable energy amongst the members of District 323. The design group created the invitation and videos. The research group studied extensively on the topic and shared vital information in the form of videos and articles. The speaker coordination group facilitated the speakers in every possible way, while the Q&A group streamlined the questions received during the registration process. I would like to thank the secretaries for enthusiastically participating in this program and conclude with this dream team slide. Thank you very much.
Thank you, District Secretary Aarti. I now request our District Chairman, Ma'am Usha Sarogi, to share today's program.
Good evening, everybody. Dignitaries from Renewables, past International Renewable President Kamala Ramakrishnan, past International Renewable Treasurer Ardu Annamalai, convener of the program PDC Sushi Natras, and PDC Galaxy of PDCs, my Hope Angel secretaries, District Secretary Aarti Narayanan, members of District 323, and the eminent speakers, Mr. Udayakumar, Mr. Ramani, and Mr. Subramanian, greeting to one and all. It's a very new, it's not new, I will say, but it's a very good concept, Aarti, which you have taken. It's a need of the hour. I'll tell you why. The nation that leads the renewable energy will be the nation that leads the world. Renewable energy, also called alternative energy, derived from the natural process which don't get adjusted when we use. First and perhaps most, we are in danger of running the climate through carbon dioxide emission and thereby causing global warming, which is a very big issue. If we continue to use fossil fuel, we may increase the temperature of the planet in the way that will harm us and our entire ecosystem. For both the reason, we need to find out other source of energy that don't emit carbon dioxide when used. And you have chosen a very good, the speakers are very good, and they will tell us how we can utilize the other resources of energy. Renewable energy generally don't pose risk for people or the environment. The air and water pollution emitted by coal and natural gas planet is linked with breathing problem. Other serious problem, wind, solar and hydroelectric system generate electricity with no associate as pollution emission, and as our district secretary Aarti told, we ladies are exposed to the real direct this thing, and this biogas is a very good energy system for us. And very important, this renewable energy create more job than other source of energy. Most of these jobs will be created in a struggling manufacturing sector. This will pioneer the new energy future. The future is green energy, sustainability and renewable energy. And thank you, Aarti, for choosing such a very nice, which is very close to our heart. If you will get more information by the speakers, we will definitely will try to bring in our system, and we will use our members to utilize more and more this renewable energy. That's all. All the best. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Chairman Ushaji. Malini, Secretary speaks about an analysis of the online survey done in the month of October.
Thank you, Usha. Here the members present. A group of 7 members had done an online survey to understand people's awareness about renewable energy. I'm happy to present to you the finding of the same. We had conducted an online survey from the 1st of October to the 9th of October 2020, wherein 174 people had responded to our survey. Of the 174 respondents, 138 were above the age of 40 and 36 were below the age of 40. Let us first have a look at the 5 questions we had asked in the survey. The first question that we wanted to know was the age of the members, if they were above 40 or below 40. The next question was to understand if the respondents were aware of the concept of renewable energy, followed by their awareness of the difference between the renewable and non-renewable energy. The fourth question was to get an idea about the factors that would influence the decision to switch to renewable energy sources. The last question was the extent to which a given factor would be considered a barrier in switching from fossil fuel to renewable energy. Now let's have a look at the analysis of the survey. Of the total 138 respondents who were above the age of 40, 81% of the respondents had heard about renewable energy, while 13% hadn't heard of this concept and 6% of the respondents were not sure about it. Again, out of the total respondents, 76% were aware of the difference between the renewable and non-renewable energy, and about 14% of them were not aware of it, and 10 of them were not sure about this. For the fourth and fifth question, multiple selections were allowed. So as per the analysis, the major factor that would influence the respondents' decision to switch to renewable energy, the first and foremost factor was the maintenance cost, followed by the ease of maintenance and the cost of purchase. We found that in the analysis, the main barrier that people considered for switching from fossil fuel to renewable energy was the lack of information, followed by the expenses incurred to do such a switch. When we looked at the response received from 36 people who were below the age of 40, 83% of them were aware of renewable energy, where 11% had not heard of the concept. 6% of the respondents were not sure about the answer. Then again, 78% of the respondents were aware of the difference between the renewable and non-renewable energy, while 14% were not aware and 8% were not sure. Here again, the major factors that would influence the decision to switch from renewable energy, the first and foremost factor was the maintenance cost and the cost of purchase, followed by the ease of maintenance of such a switch. And here, the main barrier which people considered for switching to renewable energy was the expenses incurred to have such a switch, followed by the lack of information available. So from the sample size of 174 respondents, we observed that 79% of the respondents across all the age group have heard of the renewable energy, and 74% of them were aware of the differences between the two. The major factor that was influencing the switch to renewable energy are the maintenance cost and cost of purchase. And when you look at the barriers, the main barrier was the lack of availability of information and the cost involved in making the switch. Thank you for this was a very short analysis that we could do. Thank you.
Thank you, Malini. We now showcase India's potential in the renewable sector, compiled by Soumya Shankar, Secretary, Energy Club of Chennai Symphony.
Did you know that 3 out of the top 5 solar power plants in the world are in India? 1,000 megawatts in Kurnool, 1,400 megawatts in Pavagada, 2,245 megawatts in Badla. Speaking at the recent G20 summit, our Prime Minister Modi pointed out that India is one of the very few countries to not only meet but exceed our renewable energy target of 175 gigawatts well before the target of year 2022 under the Global Climate Convention. The government has designed policies, programs, and a liberal environment to attract foreign investments and ramp up our renewable energy capacity at a rapid rate. Over the next couple of minutes, we will share the details of some of the key initiatives that our government has taken in the area of renewable energy.
Bright sunshine for around 300 days in a year. Swift winds over most of the geographical area. Numerous powerful water streams in hilly regions and abundant greenery all over. Mother Nature has bestowed a bounty of natural resources to India. The exponential growth in population, followed by urbanization and industrialization, are increasing the demand of power day by day. Hence, India developed a strategy and roadmap to explore and exploit renewable sources of energy to power its dream of sustainable growth.
As of December of 2019, India's solar capacity was sitting at around 32 gigawatts, and it continues to increase due to the fact that India is the lowest cost provider of solar power in the world. With that in mind, it's no surprise that India's solar energy space is attracting to see the huge potential that this market has.
We care for the planet. Over the last 4 years, India has undertaken a path-breaking journey in its push towards a renewable energy-powered future. During this period, it has doubled its renewable power capacity. Today, India is the world's 4th largest wind energy producer and 5th in total renewable power installed. The efforts undertaken by the Ministry of New and Renewable Energy are ensuring that India is on track to meet and exceed its target of generating 175 gigawatts from renewable sources by the year 2022. In the last 4 years, the nation has achieved tremendous growth in solar power capacity, which has increased by more than 8 times to 22,000 megawatts. Just in the year 2017, more than 100 billion units of energy from renewable sources were generated, which is a record. India now has some of the world's lowest renewable energy tariffs, touching rupees 2.44 per unit for solar and rupees 2.43 per unit for wind. To provide clean cooking energy solutions, 2.5 lakh biogas plants have also been set up in rural regions.
No doubt, India has the makings of becoming the world capital of green energy and is heading towards realizing the dream of clean, green, and affordable power to all.
I'm sure you would agree India's leadership in renewable energy makes us all proud. Is there something that each of us can do towards switching to renewable energy and sustainable living? The answer is a big yes. We will now showcase the inspiring stories of our friends who have successfully implemented renewable energy solutions in their homes and workspaces.
Thank you, Soumya Shankar. I now call upon Soumya Natarajan, Secretary in the Wheel Club of Chennai United, to introduce our speaker, Mr. Ramani.
Thank you, Usha. Our speaker on wind energy today is Mr. N. Ramani. Mr. Ramani has a bachelor's degree in engineering from IISc. He is currently CEO of Energy Space and Windia Green Power Private Limited. He's also advisor to the Suzlon Group and Atha Group of companies. With an experience of 4 decades in the renewable sector, particularly wind and solar power, he has advised wind projects at Larsen and Toubro and has been the president wind business of organization at Orient Green Power Limited. He's been managing director of a wind farm developing company, Westcare, and worked in parallel as president at Das Lagaway Wind Turbine Company. Mr. Ramani has been nominated member of the TNEB Advisory Committee and member of working group for formulation of sector-specific policy for clean energy. He plays an active role in Indian Wind Turbine Manufacturer Association, where he heads the task force for addressing industry problems and strategizing wind policy in general and state-specific policies to expand the wind industry in India. Mr. Ramani is National Council member of the Indian Wind Power Producers Association, playing a catalytic role in getting the national level policy for the investor community. An active social worker, Mr. Ramani is past president of RK Nagar Lions Club and JCs. He is committed to donate his eyes and is a regular blood donor. He's an elected member of IISc, Alumni Association Management Committee. He's ably supported by wife Vishalam and daughter Pooja. Honored to have you, sir.
Thank you. Yeah, shall I start?
Rajan. Thank you, Soumya Natarajan. I now request our speaker, Mr. Ramani, to address the gathering.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. It's nice. The awareness is spreading more. The interest is showing. My presentation is more on generic in nature. The last part of it, I'll dwell something about wind as well as offshore, etc. See, let's go through what is the conventional and non-conventional energy.
Sorry to interrupt. Can I play the
First,
presentation?
yeah, please, yeah. Yeah. So the conventional and non-conventional. The non-conventional is also called renewables. The conventional, as we are aware, is a conventional what we have been used to. When you are reaching Chennai, you would have come across Basin Bridge. There is a North Chennai, or maybe a Neyveli. These are all the thermal stations. In Tamil Nadu, you would have come across. In Andhra Pradesh, you would have come across Simhadri and Rayalaseema. In Karnataka, maybe a Raichur. Telangana can be a Ramagundam, Kottagudam. So these are all, we have been used to a particular power generation all along. Maybe in the last, from the independence, almost 75 years, you would have come across 50, 60 years, our focus has been mainly on thermal. Because India is bested with lots of, second slide also you can go. Lots of coal pits, and we have lots of natural resources like coal. Here what happens is, in the conventional, we talked about thermal. Again, part of it, India had got power from a hydel, that is mainly on water resources. See, one thing is, though India has huge amount of coal pits and natural, there are some limitations and characteristics of coal related thermal plants. One, it is finite, it is not infinite. So after a particular time frame, the way India has accelerated industrial growth, you will come across, there are some studies which says by 2050, the Indian coal capacity will get exhausted. And more you go and use, and if you go deep into the earth, you will come across the cost of excavation, etc. will increase. These are all the cost part. Two, industrial revolution development is happening across India, whereas the coal pits are selected places. So there has to be a lots of logistics involved in transporting coals from those coal pits up to various thermal plants across India. It involves logistics, train movements, goods train, etc. In case of hydro, you will come across most of it is in a north and northeastern where there are lots of hilly terrain. The flow of water does contribute to the power generation, and these are all stored in a dam, and from the dam when it is released, it gets the power generation also. India being an agriculture country, the priority focus is on agriculture from the water. Whereas we can't give a priority for power generation. As far as hydro is concerned, power generation becomes part of water management. Again, as you are aware, with reference to water, it has to flow from one place to another. There continues to be interstate disputes between various states. For example, Kaveri between Tamil Nadu, Karnataka, there is some thing between Tamil Nadu, Kerala, and Andhra and Karnataka. So interstate disputes on water also plays vital role with reference to water management, thus the backward integration of power generation per se. And it also pollutes. See, that's where the another thing comes. And whereas with reference to renewable, again, I will not use a word positive and negative, I will use a word characteristics. Whatever the problem or the characteristics of a conventional with reference to thermal and hydel, renewable, for example, we will focus on wind, solar, biomass, and small hydro. Wind, which blows across various states, there is no restrictions on the wind being blown. Also, there is no necessity for us to catch and keep it. So it goes, and for every seasonal thing, there is always a wind flow. And normal people can think, can I not put wind turbines in our Chennai beach and things like that? We will address it. For producing power economically, it requires at a particular speed, which we feel is possible in particular places. Earlier in Tamil Nadu, it was more in Nagarkoil belt, what we call it Aravalai and Chengota Pass and Coimbatore Pass. Whereas with the higher technology coming, we start moving towards Trichy side also. In the same way, we start moving in various states. Earlier, it was not so much in Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka. Of late, you will come across lots of wind potential that come up. If at all we are talking about around 9,000 megawatt installed in Tamil Nadu, you will come across Gujarat has installed 6,100 megawatts, and Maharashtra, Karnataka almost contribute 5,000 each. Thereby, with the technology coming, and we are able to harvest more and more. So the restriction of storing and things like that is not applicable to wind. And it is every year it comes. There is nothing like my coal capacity will exhaust by 2050. There is nothing like exhaustion of wind power. That's why it is called renewable. It is renewed, so that every year, every wind season, every monsoon session, etc., you get it. So you so does also. Whereas with reference to solar, you will come across India being a sunshine country. You come across solar radiation or sunlight is predominantly high across India, which helps to generate power also. Yeah, go to the next slide. And what are the points I talked about is coming here in a different format. As I said, in conventional energy like a thermal, the coal pits are in a different place, generation in a different place. It involves in logistics. Thereby, the cost of power goes up. Also, when you have of late, there are new philosophies of thermal plants being put by Tamil Nadu in Jharkhand, so that the power produced there is wheeled through an interstate grid. That's what we call it. So again, that cost lots of transmission charges or transmission cost. Whereas in case of a renewable energy or a non-conventional energy, the power is being distributed, generation across. For example, earlier the power in Tamil Nadu would have been mainly from few places like Chennai and some other stations. Whereas now solar and wind is getting generated across various places. Thereby, compared to the earlier occasion, from a hub, it was produced, transmitted across, lots of energy wasted. The quality was not up to the mark. Whereas now the power getting generated at various places through wind as well as through solar, the energy loss is less, as well as the quality of power, what we call it, frequency, etc. good. Thereby, earlier it was mainly done by government for power generation. So most of the things were done earlier by government. Subsequently, monolithic, huge corporates came into the picture of thermal. Whereas thermal plants, we talk about 2 into 80 megawatt, 150 into 2, 600 into 2. It's a huge project per se. They have to take a huge plan layout and start doing it. Whereas the wind and solar are not like that. It's a modular form per se. One can start doing a 5 megawatt up to 500 megawatt also. So thereby, as the time goes, as the availability of a resource, as the availability of a finance, one can start developing it module by module. Thereby, the generation of the power happens within a 6 months of inception. Whereas in thermal and hydro, it is a 3 years and 8 years. Because of it involves a lot of environment clearance also required. As some other person talked about, it pollutes, lots of pollution happens. And this does cause a lot of harm to the people health. Also, what we call the global climate, temperature increases and causes a lot of havoc. We start talking about melting of Arctic and Himalayan ranges, which is supposed to flood. And we talk about the sea level increases. Because of the sea level increase, we talked about Maldives may extinguish, as well as Chennai coastal line may come by 50 centimeters, 60 centimeters in 10, 15 years. Thereby, these are all the side effects or a negative effect of a pollution. That is, thermal power is one of the reasons for it. Also, it may be a surprise to find car pollution causes more damage than the thermal pollution. But when our subject is made on a thermal, so it does cause lots of havoc. So whereas if with reference to the renewable energy, the pollution is not at all there. So apart from what we talk about quality of power, better and cheaper. And so we are competing. Now the renewables are competing with the conventional energy. Does it mean we can take over 100% of power requirements in India? The characteristics of thermal, you can produce 24/7, 365 days, not a problem. Whereas in case of a wind, it has a limitations. It comes mainly, for example, in the southern belt, you'll come to a northwestern monsoon, etc. The wind starts blowing from May till September. Again, small power is produced from January, February. If there are 100 units produced in a year, May till September contributes around 60-65%. Balance 35% is produced over another 5-6 months. So it is a skewed. The powers are produced during the wind season more, and the other wind season is not there. Whereas in a thermal plants is a 365 by 24/7, 365 days, so that one can continuously get non-stop round-the-clock power. Whereas with reference to the wind, we have to, there's a saying in Tamil, so that one can take the wind, we can harvest them whenever it is there. Banking is an option. We will discuss about it. That may not be a very great option today because it's very costly. So it's called informed power. Informed, it is we are not able to judge what date, what period, how much of power can be generated. So it is always a combination of various sources of renewables can sort of compete with conventional power, thermal power or hydro. When we are talking about wind, it blows through the wind season, especially you will come across May, June, July, August, September, it blows. Or you will come across July, August, September, it is 24/7. You'll come across a constant wind speed that is produce the maximum power across the full year calendar period. Whereas you club it with solar, again, maybe my co-speaker will also talk about it, from morning 10 to evening 4 or something like that. Daily you can get a particular pattern of a base load factor. So by combination of these two, there is a possibility that we can achieve better plant load factor or the requirement of the customer or a consumer. So the combination of these two will help. And of late, government is also start looking at the option of, instead of talking wind separately and solar separately, we start talking more in terms of a hybrid. There's a possibility of clubbing both these things together, so that the hybrid, it gives more stable power and the quality and the frequency can be matched. Clubbing with battery will increase the frequency spectrum, or the quality will be better, so that again we can compete. And to give you some more information, the latest 5,000 megawatt tender from Government of India, SECI, they are trying to talk about solar, wind, battery, as well as thermal also. So the conventional and non-conventional will get merged in a particular plane, so that it becomes easier for the people to get power and cheaper power. And as somebody who did talk about earlier passing reference, the cost of the power has come down in the renewables up to almost 2 rupee 32 paise. So that gives such a competing with the renewable conventional power. There are many corporates have shelved their thermal plant program because they realize after 3-4 years the cost of production of thermal will be very costly compared to the solar and wind. So they start focusing more on economical sense, the renewable energy combination of all that. Just give a overall view. In India, you will come across in the last, since independence, 75 years of independence, around 400 gigawatt. You can assume 400,000 megawatt of power is being produced in the conventional. Whereas in the last 20-25 years, the renewable energy, non-conventional, is contributing to almost 100 gigawatt. So you will realize that 25% we are able to achieve of the conventional capacity of 75 years. So the pace of increase of the conventional energy is tremendously accelerated growth, with the present government focusing on 225 gigawatt and 350 gigawatt before 2030. There will be a time by 2030, 2035, the installed capacity of a conventional and non-conventional will be same. So you will find both merge the installed capacity. And the power generation will almost be 60-70% of the energy generated in India will mainly from renewables. Also, there are plans afoot where I have been involved earlier also. How do we produce power in India, southern tip of India like Tamil Nadu, and export the power to Sri Lanka? That is also possible. So what happens is there are some wind potential sites in Tamil Nadu which we can produce green power and transport it, wheel it to Sri Lanka also. And these are all generic in nature I have been talking about. And you will realize the potential of renewables in India. The average household energy capacity, one house average wise, you can assume 4 people or something like that, they consume around 1,200 units per year. These are all a round figure I'm saying. A household in India consumes 1,200 units per year, whereas in states it is 13,000, almost 10 times the power consumption they make. One is to feel that Indian consumption is less, or lots of potential for Indian consumers to go ahead. So when we look at such a vast capacity of consumption possible, and more industrialization coming, and India becoming a manufacturing hub for the world, we do foresee the green power plays a vital role more than the thermal and hydro. Also, you will come across earlier the coals were coming from countries like Indonesia, Australia. the quality was supposed to be different and better. Suddenly, one overnight, Indonesian government came with a law saying that you can't just export the coal; it has to be refined, there has to be a value added, etc. That puts a spoke in the wheel. Thereby, our dependence on Indian coal, the quality is not good, the efficiency is not to that extent good, so that we are forced to depend on the imported goods. So that is also causing our dependence on the external does make a lot of limitations. So thereby focusing back to the square one, high potential of growth of renewables in India. With this, I feel, and of course, passing reference, India being a vast country, lots of land available, still there are options. India is trying to do some experimental theory on offshore. One is near the Rameswaram, other one is near the Gujarat. There's a huge potential for an offshore, like in the middle of the sea, you'll come across in the Indian environment, huge wind turbines being installed and power being produced, and the power being transmitted from the center of the beach, the center of the ocean to the onshore through the underlying cable. Then it gets transmitted across. These are all the things which is in the offing. And the wind turbines per se is expanding the technology. Earlier, we started with 55 kilowatt. Now it is traveled to 4,000 kilowatt. You will find such a huge, vast increase in capacity is there. And the efficiency is also, earlier we are producing around 16 lakhs per megawatt. Now it is 70 lakhs per megawatt we can produce. Thereby such a lot of technology innovations also happening, which helps Indian renewable energy to compete with the thermal, the conventional power, as well as internationally, we are nowhere less. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, sir, for enlightening us with some valuable information. Definitely, it is high time we switch over to a renewable energy sources to avoid any more damage to the environment. Sudha Murali, Secretary, Innovate Club of Chennai Tiruvannur, will now introduce our speaker, Mr. Udayakumar.
Thank you. Awareness and information on bioenergy. Another source of renewable energy is brought to us today by Mr. M.R. Udayakumar, a chemical engineer from the University of Madras with a postgraduate from IIT Madras. Mr. Udayakumar has over 40 years of experience in projects and facilities management and environment conservation. He is co-founder and director, Primeworth Workspace Solutions Private Limited, offering facilities management, project management, and sustainable technological solutions. Formerly, he was General Manager, Facilities Management at Hindustan Aeronautics Limited, Bangalore. He has worked in various capacities with corporate majors and MNCs like SPIC and Cushman and Wakefield. He has worked in the area of energy and environment conservation and management during his tenure with Tata Energy Research Institute. At SPIC, he worked as research engineer in the area of pollution control and environment conservation. He has contributed in many environmental projects, including that of SOER for the state of Karnataka in the area of mining and quarrying. He has presented talks in the CIA conclaves in the area of environment and property management. Apart from his academics and professional career, Mr. Udayakumar is actively involved in sports, NCC, and Scouts. He is part of shooting team and has attended many camps at the Army Attachment Camp at MEG Bangalore. Welcome, sir. Thank you.
And good afternoon to everybody and my co-panelists and organizers.
I now request the speaker, Mr. Udayakumar, to address the gathering.
Thank you. My topic is about bioenergy. Mr. Ramani has spoken and he has presented well about the overall picture of energy scenario in India. And I'll be concentrating on aspects of bioenergy, especially which is from biomass. Of course, wind and solar energy has picked up a lot in India, and and lot of encouragement and lot of awareness has come into that, and people started utilizing and understanding the importance and reaping the benefits of it. Bioenergy, which is from biomass, is still, I would say, in India, it's in a nascent stage and yet to pick up. But a lot of activities have undergone in this area. I would like to present basics about bioenergy so that, and from the point of user's point of view in this presentation. Bioenergy is more of agro and rural based, and there is a lot of opportunity for the people, farmers, villagers, and small cities and town people can pick up this technology and use it for their benefits. See, bioenergy is nothing but energy or produced from biomass. Biomass is nothing but organic matter produced by biosynthesis. It is nothing but plants, leaves, crops, algae, wood, whatever, whichever has got organic content is considered as a biomass. So mainly we derive biofuels from this biomass. So what are the different biofuels? One is biodiesel, bioethanol, and biogas. And biogas is well known to people, and biodiesel and bioethanol is coming up slowly in India. Mainly, biofuels are produced from plant materials and certain type of crops, and biodiesel is produced from recycled or waste vegetable oils. And similarly, burning wood and other material, we can produce synthetic gas so that energy can be produced. Why we should promote biofuels? Biofuels will contribute to the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. It will also contribute to the security of energy supply and promote greater use of renewable energy, and to diversify agriculture economies into new markets. So what are the different methods of converting biomass into energy? One is direct combustion, that all of us will know. Putting the biomass or wood, we can burn it in the boiler and produce steam and run the turbine and generate electricity. It is very, now putting the biomass directly into the boiler becomes difficult. Nowadays, we are making it as a biocoal, that is nothing but briquettes, and feed into boilers and gasifiers and produce steam and run generators. And second formation is form of producing energies, gasification, pyrolysis, and digestion. Here, in this presentation, we talk about only the three aspects of this. One is biogas producing digesters, and energy producing using biocoal and biodiesels. What is biogas? Biogas is everybody know about it, and people started using it. Biogas is a combustible gaseous fuel collected from microbial degradation of organic matter in anaerobic condition. It generally consists of methane and carbon dioxide and traces of other gases. So biogas can be produced from landfills, lagoons, and anything which contains organic matters. It mainly 60% of methane and 35% of carbon dioxide. So any organic matter, waste matter can be used to produce biogas. Especially we must have heard of in villages, they go for gobar gas production. There is nothing but using animal waste, that is cow dung or cattle waste, will be producing biogas. But nowadays, um, scientists have developed a system where kitchen waste, wet waste from municipal solid waste, food waste, or any agriculture waste can be converted into biogas and used. Recently, I come across, maybe a couple of days back, I read in newspaper, Punjab government has sanctioned 300 ton per day of biogas plant where the stubbles are being used to produce biogas. As all of you know, the stubble burning in Punjab has created a lot of pollution. So in order to avoid that, this project definitely will help the pollution reduction as well as the community, and power will be generated through that, and it can be used for the community purpose. It is a schematic representation showing what are the inputs and what are the outputs of biogas digester, that is anaerobic digester. We can use livestock waste, crops, wastewater or food waste, and those things can be put into anaerobic digester, and we can produce biogas or digestate, which can be used as a fit manure. And biogas can mainly consists of biomethane, can be used for heat, electricity, or we can produce power and put it in the general electrical grid. Maybe in abroad, there is a gas is required for heating the residences, so it can also be put in gas grids. This is a schematic representation of this bio. So what is biodigester? Biodigester is just a vessel, a reactor, where the decomposition of this organic matter, waste matter takes place, and it is converted into gas. This process is called anaerobic digestion. So whatever gas produced, as I already told, it can be converted to cooking, heating purpose, lighting purpose, electricity generation, etc. I just want to show you a schematic picture of the word digester. Digester will look like, depending upon the size, it will be consists of two parts. One is the bottom part where the digestion takes place, and the top portion where whatever the gas is produced will get collected, and it will be used for the purpose in which it is required. So there are different types of digesters are available depending upon the requirement, and mainly there are batch plants, continuous plants, semi-batch plants are there. But in general, these are classified as per the digesters, fixed dome plants and floating drum plants, or flexible balloon type plants. That type of things are coming up depending upon the requirement. I just want to show you some schematic picture how a fixed dome will look like. It is mainly, you must have seen in villages, it is made out of bricks and cement, and it is fixed. It is not so much flexible in operation. You can see the schematic picture of how the fixed dome biogas plant looks. Here we mix the slurry, cow dung slurry, and feed it into it, and then biogas, maybe after first 15 days or so, first cycle of biogas will be coming after 15 days, and afterwards every day biogas will be produced, and the gas can be taken out and used for the cooking or heating or power generation purpose. And whatever slurry coming out, spent slurry, can be used as a manure after drying. Similarly, next is floating type. This is normally used in villages, and even modern the compact plants are coming where these things can be used in households. The size of the plants are also coming up in a different scale. Even for 1 meter cube, 2 meter cube, 1.5 meter cube gas plants are coming up. It can be used for residential purpose. This is in brief about biogas production. Of course, there are larger plants are coming up where we can treat the waste in tons, maybe 1 ton, 2 ton, and up to 50 tons per day we can go about producing these gases. In general, most of the municipalities are planning to use this biogas production technology to convert the wet waste in the municipal solid waste and convert that into electricity and feed into the grid. And we are also working on a project where Haveri in Karnataka, those municipality is planning to set up 11 ton per day biogas plant to produce electricity and use it for community purpose, town purpose. It may 50% of their demand, power demand, may be satisfied by this biogas in that in this place. Even lot of farms, goshalas, wherever more cows are there, and they find it very difficult to treat the cow dung waste. So it is a beneficial and advantageous system where cow dungs can be used for producing power to use in their residences or the establishments. Normally, the Gaushalas with 100 to 200 cows. Nowadays, people are preferring to go in for biogas plant. Even households, people can go for smaller biogas plants. And in, for example, a gated community with 100, 200 apartments or a gated community with villas, people can go in for biogas. It is one of the best way of treating their wet waste. All of you know nowadays corporation guys says that waste cannot be handed over to the municipality. They have to treat themselves if number of flats are more than 5 or 10. Such rules are coming. So biogas generation is one of the best way of treating those wet waste. Even if it is smaller quantities, there are other methods available called organic waste converters. That methodology can be used. Of course, the energy is not created using that. Manure is produced, and that manure can be used for gardening purpose. So there is lot of benefits in this, but only awareness is slowly coming up. And even the policy guidelines and others have to be developed in such a way that people will go in for, because it is common man's technology. Anybody and everybody can use it, right from a single family to a community to industry and whatever it is. So this is have to pick up, and there are a lot of opportunity for it to come up in this. And now the technology is well matured, unlike before. Standardized designs and technology is available, and no need to worry whether these things will work or it won't work. It's only thing is that people who operate it have to do it meticulously, feeding the wet waste into the biogas digester and producing the gas and using it. Of course, bigger plants are modernized, automated. In smaller scale, we'll have to do it manually. Only thing is, feeding should be proper. If you overfeed it, biogas plant won't work. In layman's language, they say that biogas digester is nothing but a person's stomach. If you overeat, you will get into trouble like that. Similarly, you cannot overload a biogas digester. If you overload it, it won't work. So, so people can start using it for their benefit. So next, I'll talk about two more technologies. One is biocoal and biodiesel. Of course, biocoal is nothing but briquettes, biomass briquettes, and now it is becoming finding lot of potential in industries wherever power need to be generated and boiler have to be driven, and these briquettes are used. one of the technology to use it is gasification purpose, where by pyrolysis or burning it, gases are produced that in turn can be used for either for producing steam or run the generator to produce electricity. So now this is called briquettes. It is made out of agriculture waste. You grind it and make it a compact unit using this machine, and this can be used like it is easy to handle, and it can be used for burning either in a gasifier or in a boiler and produce steam or heat for regular purpose. Now recently we have come across through my co-panelist, Mr. Subramanian, even larger thermal power plant like NTPC are going for using this bio coal or otherwise bio briquettes as a source of fuel in producing steam and further producing electricity. And in abroad, it is a well matured business and lot of players are there. In India also, lot of agriculture people who wants to treat or dispose their agriculture waste. They are now getting into producing this bio briquettes and started selling it. And it is the cost is varying from around 4,000 rupees to 5,000 rupees per ton, depending upon the quality of these briquettes. And even in rural areas, these things are widely used, and it is also now picked up by many industrialists where cleaner. This is a by burning it, you don't increase the carbon dioxide. That is global warming and will not be uh, impacted. So this is a very uh, friendly fuel, unlike fossil fuels. So next I would like to talk about biofuel. Biofuel is nothing but a liquid fuel which can be used using biomasses. Now we are in the second generation stage. First generation bioedible fuel can be produced using edible biomasses. Of course, in India, it will be very difficult because our food security is first priority for us. So the first generation biofuel producing using first generation technique is not very much viable. Maybe we are going for second generation where wood, straw, grass, and waste oil can be used to produce biofuel. And third generation and fourth generation still in development stage in India. I'll tell you how to produce. Of course, it's a process. It's a chemical process called esterification. This is the sample of biofuel, or it is a biodiesel. It can be blended with regular gas, petrol or diesel, and cars can be operated. This is the process in which this can be used. Biodiesel can be produced. The process used is esterification. Of course, using that by this process, you get biodiesel as well as glycerin, and glycerin can be used for many household and industrial applications. And biodiesel can be used for operating, driving the car. Here, one of our visitor, Mr. Avinash Narayana Swami, is present. He is having his unit in Bangalore, which produces biodiesel. And this is the car he is driven by him. And it is an incubator firm promoted by CIIRC. And he has producing biodiesel and using it in the car. You can see that. And using this car, he has already traveled around 10,000 kilometers in India to the various states. Of course, in abroad, biodiesels are very much familiar, and a lot of incentives and policies are being developed in such a way that this usage of biodiesels are encouraged. Of course, in India, it is yet to find place due to so many regulatory and economical problems. So this is in short about the bioenergy, and I would like to touch upon the details like what are the advantages of using biomass energy. As I explained earlier, it is abundant, secure, environmentally friendly, and renewable source of energy. It can be used for generate electricity and also for cooking, not associated with any impacts, environment impacts such as acid rains, oil spills, or any other pollution problems. Sustainable green plants from which biomass fuels are derived fix carbon dioxide. So the atmospheric carbon dioxide comes down. So these are all the advantages. And even as there are some disadvantages also. The cost of construction of biogas plant is high. Of course, it has come down because of technology intervention and maturity of the technology. The cost of construction has come down, and it is only thing is difficult to store the biogas, and because it has to be purified. Uh, but again, the technology we have developed to purify the biogas and started storing in cylinders. Of course, the cost parameter has to come down in this case. And transportation of biogas is difficult. And if a lot of people get into this, and our food security problem will become more. These are all the some of the disadvantage. Of course, by creating awareness and technology interventions, these disadvantages can be reduced, and people can start using this biomass energy in a way, in a relevant manner. This is what I would like to present in this uh, scenario. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for giving some valuable information on bioenergy and the waste management. Definitely, we look forward that our country also recognizes the importance of using the biomass and use it to the fullest. I now call upon Soumya Srinivasan, Secretary, Innovate Club of Madras Central Aditya, to introduce our speaker, Mr. Subramanian Hariharan.
Thank you, Usha. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Mr. Subramanian Hariharan, who will speak to us on solar energy. A computer science engineer specializing in electronics and chip designing, he went on to pursue MBA in the UK. He is currently the managing director of Prominus Innovations Private Limited, a technology innovations company specializing in renewable energy. His company provides solar power solutions for commercial, industrial, and residential sectors. Their services include solar power plant design, installation and operations, EPC, energy audit, and asset management, performance monitoring, and system integration. He has over 15 years of industry experience in manufacturing and 5 years of experience in solar power and wind power control systems in Europe. Mr. Hariharan has earlier worked as director in Hitachi, Harman Kardon, and advisors to companies in the energy, automotive, and manufacturing sector in Europe. He has delivered a large-scale program with a 300-member team in the renewable energy sector in Europe, managing and performance monitoring solar power plants and wind turbines. A speaker at Gartner Roundtable at London Durkin, and a panel speaker at Microsoft Europe. His desire is to help people have continued access to fundamental resources like electricity, water, and help Indian business become more productive and competitive in the global market. Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Soumya Srinivasan. I now request our speaker, Mr. Hariharan, to address the gathering.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this wonderful session and for the great team to organize this event. So it's been great. I will share my slide deck for a second. Can you all see my screen?
Yes.
So yeah, yeah. I will focus on solar energy first. I'll set the context of why are we going for these kind of renewable energies in the first couple of slides, and also the types of it and how do we really go about it. For me, one is the technology change, the solar energy and all that, but it also requires a mindset change of how we produce power ourselves and then use it. We've all been through, producing power from elsewhere and then transmitting through the grid lines and just using it at home and, the buildings and so on. But this is slightly changing the game, and that also requires a mindset change. So I'll start with a positive note. Solar panels can help people to produce their own free electricity forever. Yeah, so that's how beneficial solar panel is, and there is no need for electricity grid for solar panels to work, and it can be independently used in the cities, villages, and communities. So in villages where there is problem for there's no nearby grid lines or no electricity available and so on, these can come in handy for them to be self-sufficient. I will also talk about both centralized and decentralized models of how these solar powers can be used. Mr. Ramani spoke about mostly on the centralized production of power and then distributing it to larger scale industries and so on. But more from the residential commercial buildings in the cities and villages, decentralized gives a massive advantage for people to be independent. These are called off-grid systems. I'll talk about the types of it later on in the slides below. Setting the context, currently most of our electricity comes from a place like this. Mr. Ramani spoke about energy plants, thermal power plants. Because these are located outside the cities, many of us don't know we are polluting so much. And it's actually destroying the nearby farmlands, not just nearby, in a huge surrounding area. That's causing climate change and droughts and floods and so on. On an average, a 3-bedroom house adds up to 4.5 tons of carbon emission per year, to supply electricity for their house through the thermal technology. Yeah, so that is where we need to make a big change, and yes, people have recognized the change, but that needs to happen on the ground as well. Yeah, I'll move on to the next slide. Strange, solar is being called as alternative energy. We receive enough energy every day in just 1.5 hours. That's good enough for supply power for the whole year. Yeah, and in fact, solar energy is going to be there as long as the sun is going to be there, and it's currently powering 8 full planets. So and it's going to last forever. Yeah, so there's no question of depleting the raw materials or resources. It's just going to be around, and we are still burning fossil fuels like coal for electricity. So that needs to change. With that context, solar is 100% clean energy. It's zero pollution. We are not burning anything, and it's just a glass put above the roof of places. It can be done in a small area like a 2 square meter. One single panel is just 2 square meter, and it can go up to acres and acres of module arrangements, as Mr. Ramani mentioned early on. So that's going to give clean energy, number one. And it can produce 100% of all of individual household needs, community needs, as well as the apartments and so on. In the case of the commercial buildings, large scale industries, then that's a different game altogether. I will also address that in the later stage. And a typical ROI, return on investment, for a solar panel is or system is somewhere between 4 to 7 years. The more we use, the quicker the return on investment is all about, and so on. So yeah. There are predominantly 3 types of solar power systems. On-grid, also known as grid-tied. These are connected to the grid, and it will work only when there is power in the grid. There is the off-grid, which has got no connection to the main grid at all. It can produce power, store it in the battery that can be used during the nighttime as well. And then the third type, which is becoming popular only in the recent days, that's called hybrid power. This is basically utilizing both the features of on-grid as well as the off-grid systems. So it can work like both the systems together at the same time. I will talk about individual types in the next couple of slides. As I mentioned, on-grid solar power is basically the second source. On the one side, on the top in the image, we see the grid power, which is our normal power line. And we will add the solar panels in the rooftops or on the ground. That becomes a second source. And the green box that we see in the middle, which is the inverter, where we could configure the priority of where the first source of power should come from. So the point of going to solar is ideally it should be the first source of power, and then that gets fed into the houses and things like that. Any surplus power that gets produced, let's say we go on holiday or weekend outing, the house is not using the power, the surplus power can be exported to the grid. That means we can produce power and give it to the electricity board and so on. On the on-grid type, there are a couple of disadvantages. One, it works only when there is power on the grid, which means if there is a power cut, it doesn't work. Solar power stops. That's not a disadvantage on its own. It is a regulatory requirement because if there is a maintenance on the transmission lines in your transformers or the lines, if solar power keeps producing power and exporting it to the grid, it's not safe for the linemen to work on the lines, and hence it's been deliberately designed not to export, and it requires power on the grid. It does not support battery backup, so that restricts the usage for the on-grid type only to the people who work during the daytime, hospitals, schools, community halls, commercial buildings, and so on. The bigger power plants, it doesn't make sense to go for a battery backup, a huge power plants, and they don't consume power from the grid. It only exports power to the grid, and hence it makes sense to go for these on-grid type solar power. This works only during the daytime, and because there is no battery backup and things like that. The next type is completely independent of the EB grid. The connection to the EB is not required. It's not mandatory. However, it can work together with the EB as well. So this can produce power. It can feed the power into the household loads whenever there is, when you use lightings and fans and things like that. But any surplus power, of course, there will be surplus power, which can be stored in the battery that can be used during the nighttime as well. Yeah. So what happens during cloudy days and heavy rains? Even then, solar panels won't stop producing power. The production will come down, but it will still, keep on producing as long as there is light. Rainy days, in my point of view, it is good because the panel gets cleaned up on its own, so we don't have to worry about cleaning there. So that's the advantage there. As long as we keep adding the battery capacity, you will get as much as battery backup for your nighttime usage and so on. A couple of disadvantages, because we are adding battery, that also adds up to the cost of the system. Battery costs are quite high, and of course the taxes on batteries are also quite high. The second disadvantage on the off-grid is heavy loads like AC and motor. Of course, it can be connected theoretically, but because it's heavy load, that will drain up the battery, and then your backup will naturally come down and so on. So these are ideally suited for the houses, villas, small offices, hospitals, and small community halls and so on, where they would require battery backup as well as reducing the power, and in villages where there is no power grid around and things like that. So that's the second type. The third type is a combination of both hybrid as well as the on-grid as well as the off-grid feature. It can store power in the battery for nighttime usage, and for heavy loads like AC and motor, if there is any surplus demand, only for that surplus demand, it can pull power from the grid. Rest of it naturally comes from the solar power system. So these are also ideal for the houses, villas, small offices, hospitals, and so on, where there is battery backup required. And there is a limitation on the amount of battery that we could add. In a sense, normally in your household, you would probably have one battery or two batteries. We can at max go for about 20 batteries in a place, but beyond that, it's cost prohibitive. So that's where the off-grid and hybrid limits itself. But for the larger power setup where there is centralized power required for factories and so on, then it's ideally the on-grid type system. The other setup for particularly for farmers, where there's lots of lands and fields where there is no grid line nearby, or there is no continuous power coming for them. So in those cases, solar panels can be used to power their motor pumps. Right now, they are using it from a local street lights power or diesel generator or a nearby hut or where there is a power line. So that is not necessary. These systems can be independent on its own. It can produce or pump water from the ground or from a well for the number of hours we can define. Typically, the solar systems can start producing at around 7:30 a.m. in the morning and gradually reaches its peak power at 9 o'clock. And then in the later on in the evening around 4:35, it will start gradually coming down. So between 9 to 4 or 9 to 5, we'll have peak power, but again, it'll go down as the sun sets and things like that. So this significantly helps farmers on reducing their energy cost and diesel cost. This does not require any diesel or anything as such. And the maintenance for solar panel is pretty simple. All that it takes is a hose of water. Normal water can be used to clean the panels. Just like we park our car outside and dust gets settled, once in a month or once in 2 months, not frequently, once in 2 months is more than sufficient to clean the panels off with the dust, and it'll start producing back up again. So that's the versatility of solar power systems. There are a couple of meter types that are being used in the industry. If there is any surplus power that we are not using, our systems produce power, but during the day times we may not be using those power all the time. Even if we want to turn all the lights and all the fans on, there will still be surplus power. So that can be exported. And the method for calculating how much we've exported to the grid and how much we've taken from the grid is called net metering. So basically, if it will just subtract the bigger number by small number and get the difference, and then either you get paid back from the EB or we pay the bills and things like that. Gross metering. This is more for the commercial solar farms, the huge solar farms and the industries where they produce power and export to the grid. Solar farms don't take any power from the grid at all. The whole purpose of having a solar farm is to produce and sell it to either to the government, or it can be sold to private industries and so on. In both the cases, we would be going for something called a gross metering. Yeah, so that's the two types of metering systems available or being used in India. And then I'll move on to the next slide. There are two common types of solar panels. One is called a polycrystalline, the other one is called a monocrystalline. Both are crystalline silicon crystals being used in the panels. For hotter climates, hotter temperatures, polycrystalline works better. For the moderate temperature and hill stations, monocrystalline works better. By nature of the material being used, as the temperature goes high, monocrystalline performance comes down. So most panel manufacturers give 25 years performance warranty these days. Almost all of them give the warranty for 25 years, purely because unlike a motor or any other functional system, there is no moving parts in this. It's just a simple glass with a silicon layer underneath. So wear and tear is pretty low. And the material being used on the frames are aluminum. The rusting is pretty less. And hence, their lifetime is quite longer. Yeah. And then I will talk about typical commissioning timeframes to put up a system. How quickly can a villager have a solar panel ready, how quickly can a house have a panel system ready, and so on. Yeah, so on a residential scale, all it takes is about 2 to 5 days maximum to put up a solar panel system on the rooftop and start producing from the 5th day or 6th day. For a small community, because there's going to be mix of load capacities and so on, and the way it's going to get distributed, it'll take about a month to about 8 weeks to put up a small community solar power systems, getting distributed to all of the users there. On a commercial scale, the plants can be built from a 2 months or more, depending on the scale size. But there are also external dependency where we have to work along with the electricity board, getting them connected to the power plants and so on. So that takes time for getting up and running. But the panel in itself, if it's kept focusing on the sunlight, it'll start producing power. So that's the time frames of getting a system up and running. And how do we get it done? So there are essentially two big types. One is the rooftop solar systems integration for the small communities and the houses, where a solar system integrator would come and do a simple load assessment of how much electricity you would require. They can even look at your electricity bill and say, this is how much you are currently using, and this is the size of the system required, and so on. And you would typically mount it on a metal structure and connect your electrical wiring to the solar system to distribute the power. That's the simple end of solar power system. Now going to the bigger scale, where there is a complex engineering design to be done. Yeah, because it's not just about placing the panels here and there. There is also electrical designing. There is also safety aspects to be taken care, and there are also safety certifications to be brought in. Yeah, so all of these take time, and there is a terminology called engineering procurement commissioning (EPC), which is predominantly used. These are used for large-scale solar power plant design. And because it's large scale, not many would be open for investing the capex investment upfront on these kind of systems. There are many financing models that are being available both from the government as well as the private sector. And towards the end on the right, there is also a place for technology integration, which helps us in remotely monitoring these plants, because these plants are being put up elsewhere. We may not have people in the plants all the time, so we'll have to remotely monitor them in real time. Only when the performance drops or goes up and down, if there is any alert or safety requirement, then we can send the right people at the right time to make necessary precautions and things like that. Because there is technology coming in, these will also be used for reporting and the automatic billing for the end clients and things like that. So these are the high-level services required and the timeframes for solar power system. Yeah, so I've addressed most of it and would be happy to answer any question. I hope this was sort of useful for you.
Thank you, sir. Definitely the speech of yours was giving much more valuable details on solar energy, and also our country receiving abundant solar power should utilize the same to the fullest.
Usha, just 1 minute. Let us all unmute ourselves and give the three speakers a huge round of applause. All three of them were exemplary. So, ladies and gentlemen, please unmute yourselves.
Some members of our audience have already sent in questions while registering to be addressed to the speaker. Anita Balachandar, Secretary, Innovate Club of Madras Central, Madhumati Kumar, Secretary, Innovate Club of Madras Midtown, and Geeta Ravishankar, Secretary, Innovate Club of Madras, will now moderate the Q&A session.
Thank you, Usha. I start off by thanking all the speakers for the wonderful presentation. So the questions were collected in advance by our Q&A team from the participants who had registered for this seminar. Many of them had queries, and we have collated them to cover as many questions as possible. So I start off with the questions. What would be the cost of a biogas cylinder of 15 to 20 kilo capacity? And will it last as long as an LPG cylinder of the same capacity?
As it is, the biogas cylinders availability is very less. Only few people are making it. It is coming in 12 kg cylinders. Depending upon the state, the cost varies between 40 to 60 rupees per kg. That is the cost.
Thank you, sir. The next question is, thermal power is highly polluting, as the speaker rightly pointed out, and currently the cost of generation using coal is also high at ₹5 per unit. In such a case, why can't the government encourage large solar power plants to generate energy, which I understand is only ₹250 per unit?
Yeah, so I'll answer that question. Yes, government is encouraging large-scale solar power plants. So they are, giving away a lot of tenders these days, and there's been a huge push for solar energy that's happening. So a couple of challenges on large-scale power plants. One is it requires a huge land bank. So getting a large land bank that is also nearby to the substation. So that is where you produce power on the solar power, and you've got to export it to the grid. Yeah, so that's going to be nearby. That's the first challenge, one. And the second challenge is the investment that goes on for these kind of large power plants are quite high. Yes, we have achieved last month. One of the power plants in India has achieved at 2 rupees per unit. That's happening, and we are worldwide the cheapest solar power producing country, naturally, and that is, in my point of view, that large scale power plants are required for industrial and commercial applications where you don't need to store it and distribute. There's still transmission line required and so on, and maintenance of all of those transformers and so on. So that entire cost, it's not just about production cost, but also the wheeling of power from one place to the other, and the maintenance of it applies to it, and hence we get it at the rate that we get whatever. But the mindset change that I'm asking for is for the residences, which is the large base. People can produce 100% of their power at their own houses and reduce the load on the grid so that it can be used for economic outputs and things like that. So both are required, both centralized and decentralized are required. And the residential care power production cost is zero, not even 2 rupees. So apart from the initial investment, there is no production cost. Maintenance is just a hose of water to clean the panels. So that's the sort of benefits there are, and the policies are being worked out. And I see there is a huge improvement from the policies where it was 5 years ago to now. So that's there is support from the government. So I don't deny that.
Thank you, sir. The next question is something that was put up by one of our participants in the group, and I'm combining with an already existing question. She wants to know what is the amount paid to us by Tangentco for export of our solar power to the grid? And two, why is Tangentco not agreeing to buy wind power?
See, two questions she is clubbing into one. Anyway, in Tamil Nadu itself, there are almost 10,000 megawatt of wind is available. Two, as I was mentioning, the wind produces only during a particular 4 or 5 months heavily. In the absence of the wind, what happened to the grid? See, as a user, we want power. When we switch on, we want the power to be there in the house. Whereas if it is queued only for 4 months, I'll give, the other months I will not be give. Tangentco is liable and duty bound to supply the quality of power 24/7, 365 days. So there is something called grid management, SLDC and things like that. They have some limitations of rush of wind power during a particular period, non-availability of wind power during the other side. Because wind powers are there, that does not mean they can afford to close down the thermal units. No, they are supposed to run at a particular capacity. Thereby, they are forced to run both the things. They are forced to run thermal to a particular capacity and buy the balance wind power also. Also, see, another one, it is not, we are not buying, there are some limitations. The wind or solar, if we put it, the utilization factor, what we call it capacity utilization factor. Imagine if they have a thermal plant, if they produce 100 unit, the full 100 is going 24/7, 365 days on the grid. So it helps any infrastructure like grid, etc., to be invested upon. If they are investing on solar or wind, which is supposed to be a 30%, 25% of the capacity only, or in other words, if they invest on thermal substation, thermal plant based infrastructure, grid, substations, etc., the utilization factor, the investment is 100%. The utilization of the investment is 100%. Whereas if they invest the same amount for wind or solar is only 30%. So it's a public money. They start wondering how to utilize or how to spend such a huge money on this. So they are trying to balance it out between renewables and conventional and non-conventional renewables and other things. Otherwise, the cost, as somebody was talking about, 2 rupee, 30. See, it is average out cost is different, especially like why we can't produce in the house. 45,000 rupees I have to invest today. For any common man to produce 45,000 for what? Whereas I get four units a day. So if somebody is having a business opportunity to use it as an offset against a depreciation income tax benefit, it is worth it. Otherwise, a common man to spend 45,000 to produce 4 units a day is as on date, which is not very lucrative for the end user. That's why it is not very attractive. And other one is net metering. As somebody said, when I export the power from my house to the EB, the latest policy allows the export of power. Again, how much of money I get from them, when I get from them are subjectivity. So when I'm investing on my rooftop solar, I may not get the money back in time. So that's one question which discourages people from investing on the rooftop solar as well as wind.
Thank you, sir. That was very enlightening. The next question is, what are the substitutes for cow dung in a biogas plant? In case of vegetable waste, what is the quantity required in a biogas plant?
In case of vegetable waste, see that I'll go with smaller plants, 1 cubic meter. Biogas plants are in a smaller size. It is classified in cubic meters. 1 cubic meter, 1.5 cubic meter, 2 cubic meter. That means 1,000 liters, 1,500 liters, 2,000 liters. In case of 1,000 liters, you may require around 3 kgs per day. If you can develop wet waste, that is food waste or your vegetable cutting or any other waste, 3 kg of waste if you feed, it will be okay. And if it is 1,500 liter, around 5 kgs, and it is 2 cubic meter, means 7.5 kgs, goes on and on. Of course, larger, even there are tons, 1 ton, 2 ton also can be used. That is a commercial scale or community scale. Whereas cow dung means you will have to feed more. Smaller one, 1 meter cube, you will have to load around 20 kgs. Again to 1.5, 40 kgs. Yeah, 20 kg means 2 cows. If a farmer has 2 cows, he can have a biogas plant which will feed his kitchen at least for 2 hours, 2 to 3 hours. He can, 2 problems are solved. One is disposal, waste disposal, and the saving of Indian gas or electricity. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Madhumati, you can start your questions.
Madhumati, are you in?
Anita, just carry on.
Okay.
Is Madhumati coming in?
Yeah.
Okay.
The next question is, what are the other types of renewable energies available? Could you also give us an insight into the hydropower,
question? Can you repeat the question?
Okay, I think Madhumati is having some issues. So I'll take the questions if you don't mind. Actually, the question was on other types of powers available. What are the other types of renewable energies available? Could you give us an insight into hydropower, geothermal energy, and wave energy?
See, in India, the small hydro, less than the 5 megawatt is considered as a renewable. So the same hydro is a hydro, it doesn't matter much. Whereas the smaller ones are considered as the renewables, the bigger ones are considered as a conventional. So in India, we are talking about around 145,000 megawatt of hydro, which includes greater than 5 megawatt of all hydro put together. Less than 5 megawatt comes under renewables. Other one is a geothermal, wave energy, etc. See, these are all more of as on date theoretical in nature. It is not able to come to commercialization per se. Geothermal, ground thermal heat. So there is a difference in temperature on the surface of the earth as well as the beneath the earth. The difference in the temperature people use to produce power, geothermal. The wave energy or the ocean energy you come across in the Chennai beach, extra lots of waves coming and going regularly. How to make use of such waves thrust to produce energy? That is also another thing happening around. And there are some theoretical small pilot run study done. I will not use a theoretical. There are some pilot run done, which is not commercially not yet come. So till then it is, we have to keep the fingers crossed, wait for it.
Thank you, sir. I think Madhumati is not back yet, so I'll continue with the question.
I'm back here.
Yeah, okay, Madhumati, take on, please.
Yeah, sorry, my internet is going in and out. With regards to incineration of municipal solid waste for power, are these plants meeting the environmental regulations as similar objections?
So as similar plants in Delhi had met with the public objections.
Yeah, any plant, see anything which produces emission have to get public clear, that is environment impact assessment they will have to do and get the approval of the ministry, and then only should be installed. If they are, see, public hearing will be done based on the environment impact assessment. If public hearing and other statutory authorities clears only, any plant, not only incineration plant or whatever the plant it is, production facility it is, it has to undergo these clearances as per a Ministry of Environment and Forest. Again, it depending upon the size. If it is smaller plant, local pollution control board, if it clears, fine. If it is bigger one, they will have to do impact assessment and go in for that, as cleared by Minister of Environment and Forest.
Thank you, sir. So actually there are many more questions, but during the course of your presentation, we got answers to many of them. So I'm going to some of the questions which are very general. One of the questions was, since people are beginning to realize the importance and value of renewable energy, would it be helpful if it becomes a mainstream subject taught in schools?
Yeah.
See, there is a huge employment opportunity possible. Let's look at it from practicality. There's a huge employment opportunities available in renewables. There are universities which has already started taking as a part of their curriculum and specialization. The way we say BE, electrical, electronic, there are something in renewables also. So they have been taken to the site to understand how the solar plants are being erected, how the wind turbines are getting erected, etc. Answering your question, yes, it is already in the work. It is already getting implemented as part of the curriculum.
Thank you, sir. it's really gladdening to know that it's a part of curriculum. So more and more youngsters will be aware of it. But in the meantime, how do we begin to make people realize the usefulness of this renewable energy, and how to increase its usage in the general public?
I'm using one Tamil slang, don't mistake it. We normally say Kupakaram on the tongue. It is not Kupakaran. We put the Kupai, he's there to clear it. The day we realize we causing the pollution, we start realizing how to reduce the pollution. This answer comes.
Thank you, sir. That was really a wonderful answer. So we are done with the questions that had come to us. There's one question that came during this course of the meeting, and somebody's actually made a point that for a family of 2 or 3, generating 3 kilos of food waste is very difficult. So, is there an alternative food?
Yeah, that's true. Definitely, as per standards, a family in urban area can only generate 500 grams. That is why these biogas plants are not so famous or familiar in urban cities, urban areas where small families are there. Of course, it is feasible for a apartment complex where maybe 50 or 100 apartments are there, all put together. A sizable amount of food waste is generated and biogas can be produced. Of course, it is easier than said. One have to work meticulously and carefully to operate these biogas plants, otherwise gas won't come, only we will get scoldings from others. So only a village community, I am not against that, but the discipline have to come. Why means even in our urban area, we are not ready to segregate our waste, wet waste and dry waste, and we put everything together and give it to the Kupakaran, and he will be finding it hard to, and he will be scolding all of us, and he is separating because the guys at the municipality level, they won't accept. So awareness have to start from this level. Once awareness is started at home to segregation of waste at source, then only the awareness on renewable energy and using it will become familiar in our part of the world. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. I want to wind up with...
No, there are a few more questions that have come in the chat. If I could just ask them on behalf of those who had asked. I will start with Mr. Ramani. It goes as that if India is in the 4th position in the production of wind power, is it a recent phenomenon or has India always been ahead in this sphere? And I shall ask a second question too, so that you may answer them both together. What do we do with the decommissioned wind turbines and solar panels? As in, we would be generating waste in these spheres too. Is there a way in which we can dispose of these waste?
Okay. Answering the first question, is India in the 4th position? Is it all along and things like that? See, one is to feel happy we are in the 4th position, but what happens is I should give us some comparison. In India, we have a renewable of at least wind, if I'm talking about 40,000 megawatt, for example, or 50,000 megawatt, let us say. 50,000 megawatt is what is installed of wind in India. Whereas in China, the capacity is around 3 lakh megawatt. You can assume the difference. We can say it is we are in the 4th, but there is such a huge difference between the 1, 2, 3, and 4. Of course, one is to feel happier that I am within the 5, but there is a huge amount of leap we can afford to do. And India is making some progress with reference to the accelerated growth. It is appreciable, but it is not the rank that matters. Within a more of self-contentment of looking at inside internally to find how far we are doing more to control the pollution. So thereby, the 4th is only a number. And incidentally, we happen to be in the 3, 4 for quite some time. Whereas China would have been in the lower rung, whereas they occupied the 1st rank for quite some time. Whereas America is swinging between 2 and 3. We would have been in 5, would have moved to 4, whereas Germany would have staggered behind and things like that. Answering a question, yes, the 4th is there for quite some time. Maybe I should say for 10, 15 years, we are in the same region. So 4, 5, 4, 5, and things like that. And as regard the second question of decommissioned, maybe the question would have been decommissioned old wind turbines in Tamil Nadu, especially Tamil Nadu is Mecca of a wind industry. You will come across there are very old wind turbines working for the past more than 30 years. Now it is like an old ambassador car you have. It may be polluting, its mileage you may be getting less. As far as the owner of the ambassador car is concerned, there is no pressure for him to change the car because it is running and he can get it repaired at nook and corner around the street also. So there is not much incentive available for the very old turbine installed people to change it today.
The next question I would like
Thank you,
to
sir.
pose.
The question was from me. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. The other question I would like to ask Mr. Hariharan is, this lady has asked, what would be the cost to shift to green energy, mainly solar energy? She currently, her EV bill comes to around rupees 8,000. And as an ancillary to that question, I would ask another participant's question. Are batteries expensive and do they need to be replaced frequently?
Yeah, for the first question, I would imagine the house size would be about a 3-bedroom house or so, or on an average to get that kind of a bill. Yeah, so if they currently have a normal inverter battery setup at home, yeah, the battery cost is not very different from that inverter battery. Yeah, so we are anyway investing on a battery. So solar batteries are not, way too expensive than a normal inverter battery, first part. And normal inverter currently takes power only from the grid and stores it in the battery. It doesn't really produce anything. So it's just a battery charger, so to say, and giving power to the house. So when you go for solar power, it produces power and stores in the battery. So it basically takes away the need for your normal inverter and normal battery setup. Basically, you're not investing additional, you're basically replacing that existing setup to a newer technology. That's all it is. Yeah, in terms of the cost wise. For a household that takes about 8,000 rupees bill, yeah, I would imagine, if you just want to replace your inverter setup with a solar power to produce your own power, it would be in the mark of about 50 to 60,000 rupees plus 1 or 2 batteries. But if you want to have your house powered up completely 24/7, the essential ones, the light, fans, fridge, TVs, and all these kind of things, if you would look at about 1.5 lakhs to 1.6 lakhs with a 4 battery setup, that should be sufficient enough to power your light loads, leaving away the fridge and motor completely. Yeah, so you will have your essentials powered 24 hours with solar with a 1.5 to 2 lakhs maximum investment capacity for that kind of a EB bill that comes up. Yeah.
Thank you, sir.
The next question. Yeah.
The next question is also to you. What is the long-term impact of solar farms on soil?
Yeah, so far on the big solar farms have been used on barren lands that are not being used for any other purpose or not usable for other purposes, dry lands. And the other points were where the agricultural department would not give approval for using solar panels on the cultivable land. That was the case in the past. Nowadays, there are samples, not in a larger scale. There are samples where panels can be raised above the head on a higher structure and still use the land for cultivation and producing small crops and so on, not on a paddy field or where you get rice and all that story, but for vegetable farming and the other smaller places. Yes, there are a few pockets where we've seen structures are being used, and in fact, I have a couple of such cases where they want to use the land below, and use the structure above. Fortunately, in that case, the landowner had gone to the agricultural department to get the approval. So he came to us before, after getting the approval for putting up a solar power plant. So it's a double purpose is what I would see at the moment. On a barren land, these panels, to be very honest, we have not reached the end of life situation for the panels. So solar has been around in the country for, let's say, 30 odd years. And although they say 25 years of lifetime, it doesn't stop at the end of 25 years. It will keep on producing. The performance will drop. Yeah, and as long as the panel breaks down completely, as a country, we have not gone through that situation yet. Yeah, because these are still, well within the lifetime of the structure. In terms of reusing, somebody asked a question, can we recycle all of these? The structure is a standard steel or aluminum structure, so which can be recycled. The frames of the panels are aluminum frames, so those can be recycled. The glass can be melted and recycled. The silicon that's on the solar cells, yeah, so that is exactly the very similar silicon that are being used on mobile phones and the PCs and so on. Only those rare earth material that's being on the silicon can be recycled right now. Globally, none of the electronics, not just solar, has any answer to how to basically recycle the PCB in itself. That's a much larger problem to be looked at. We haven't gone there yet.
Thank you, sir. One other question is, what is the maximum depth that is possible for solar water pumps? Depth from which it can draw water.
The maximum depth to take water is the pump's capacity, not the solar power's capacity. Yeah, so the pump's ability to take water from the bore well or the depth that you're talking about. Let's say you go for a 7 HP or a 10 HP. As we speak, I'm working with our core panelist, Mr. Udayakumar, for a water pumping system for a 30 HP system. And also another one where the depth is about 300 feet plus under the ground and about 100 feet above the ground. So about 400 feet is easily achievable with a normal 5 HP water pumping system. And that's going to be powered by, let's say, a 5 kilowatt solar power system. So if you go for a much bigger motor, then you need a much bigger solar power to give enough power to these motors. So that's based on the motor capacity, not on the solar panel in itself.
Thank you, sir. I think I've finished with the questions.
Thank you, sir, for that extremely interesting session of Q&A, though it was towards the end of the program. Indeed, it's been a great privilege to all of us to have you all with us today. Thank you all once again. Thank you, Anita, Madhumati, and Geeta for moderating the Q&A session. I now request our program advisor, PDC Sushi Natraj, to speak a few words about this program.
Thank you, Usha. Before I go on to what I wanted to say, I'd like to ask a question just struck me. Mr. Udayakumar, you were talking about how the stubble in the Punjab is now, I mean, we've read about it in the papers about how it's been converted into biogas, or at least they're making an attempt. Is it at all possible to actually cultivate non-arable land with some wild grass or something and make that the fuel for biogas in the future? Because we have acres and acres, hectares and hectares of land that is not cultivable. No?
There are two options. One is make as a biomass briquettes and give it to power plants. They will use it as a fuel. And of course, recently I saw a person who took a contract of removing all the waste material in the forest. And he employed few people to remove and collect it and bring it. And he said he will buy it. And the villagers thought this man has gone mad or joking. Definitely he is not joking. He started collecting all these waste material, which is leaves, dry leaves, this, that, and all. He started collecting it and started making briquettes and then selling it. Similarly, of course, the waste which are not used for food purpose, for either human being or animal, it can be produced and can be made into a biogas bio briquettes, and then can be used for power generation. Otherwise also, maybe using some chemical, it can be put in a biogas plant, digestion, and gas can be produced. Now Punjab, as I read, they are going for compressed biogas facilities. That means they are going to distribute it. And I think this is maybe one of the biggest in India, which is going to treat 300 tons of bio waste.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, District Secretary Aarti and District Chairman Usha, for allowing me to be involved in a program of such magnitude. I thank all the three speakers, all three of whom are experts in their field, but who have kept their speeches down to our level so that we have all understood, and we will hope to take this further. Thank you very much. I have enjoyed being a part of this team of secretaries, very enthusiastic and very keen to do things right. And this is such a meaningful program. Thank you all very much. The topic itself is so relevant. We have gained a fair insight into the basics today. We need to build on that, create awareness, and translate it into action in the near future. Making fundamental changes is not easy for many of us. And even if we do, there are certain things we must still keep in mind. Even if we switch to renewable sources, not just for energy generation, but even for other inorganic products that we use, we need to keep in mind that using discriminately is still vital. Organic and biodegradable, these are two words that have found their way into our regular conversation, and we use them generously. While both are a step in the right direction, let us remember that even a biodegradable product uses resources like electricity and water to be produced, and of course, a huge amount of fuel to transport it to us. We need to be conscious of this. We need to remember that we might find something affordable, so we use it liberally without thought. The question is not whether we can afford it. The question is whether the earth can afford it. Frugality is an old Indian tradition, a way of living. Let us go back to our roots. Thank you all once again for allowing me to be a part of this meaningful afternoon. Thank you, Aarti. Thank you, Usha. And thank you each and every secretary of every club in our district. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sushi ma'am. It was great working with you. I now call upon Anandi Sabesan, Secretary Innovation of Madras Port, to propose a vote of thanks.
Good evening, everyone. On behalf of the secretaries of the clubs of Innerville District 323, it's my great pleasure to thank all who energized today's meeting in many ways. Our district chairman, Usha Sarogi, for giving the club secretaries a platform to conduct this seminar. Thank you, Chairman Usha. Many thanks to our speakers, Mr. Hariharan, Mr. Ramani, and Mr. Udayakumar, for giving us information on solar, wind, and bioenergy, respectively, with patience and clarity. I thank the PDCs, the district EC, presidents, Innerville friends, yes, my co-secretaries for attending today. Thanks to our PDC Sushi Natraj, the advisor for this seminar, for motivating and guiding us. Thank you, PDC Sushi. Thank you, District Secretary Aarti, for your excellent coordination, the key to the success of this program. Thank you, Aarti. We, the club secretaries, have enjoyed putting together. Thank you all once again.
Unmute everyone, Aarti. Thank you all very much. Thank you for coming. It's been a great afternoon.
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Thank you and congratulations.
Well done,
and all the secretaries.
Congratulations, nice program, Sushil.
Great program.
Very
Wonderful.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Aarti. Thanks, everybody, for
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Anita, great work.
Congratulations, Aarti. Very well
One
thought
thing
out program.
I'd like to clarify one more point. Somebody asked question how to dispose of waste from small families who produce half a kg, 1 kg. Definitely,
Yes.
they will have to use
Composting.
making manure. Bio bins are available.
Composting is the only answer.
Nowadays, it's a ready-made. Even Amazon sells bio bins. They can buy it and start using it, and they can use that manure for their gardens if they have garden. Otherwise, they can give it to somebody who have garden. Even slightly bigger people can use another instrument equipment called organic waste converters that also produces manure. If it is 10 more than if it is 25 kgs, 50 kgs, some people may not have place to burn the gas produced by the biogas, because essentials of biogas, you should use the gas produced. Otherwise, you cannot deploy biogas. So in this scenario, you can use organic waste converters and produce manure, and again either sell it or use it in-house or give it to some gardens. So these are all the methods of disposal of wet waste from residences. Being an environment torch bearer, I would like to spread this message so that each one of us should dispose our wet waste and electronic waste and other waste suitably, so that we will not burden the municipality. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Udaya sir,
Thank
I
you for
have a
closing the
question
loop
for
on
you.
that.
Sir, I have a question. Why can't we save the biogas instead of, because whatever is produced, you can't use it every day. So is there any method where you can conserve the
Can't
energy?
save, you'll have to use it.
Every day, or the amount has to be used, is it?
Again, cylinder becomes expensive. As you have to use it.
What happens if it has not been used?
In villages, it's more used in urban areas. Villages time, they need not go to forest to fetch firewood by firewood. They will use it at least 2-3 hours or 4 hours of their kitchen and do the need. Technology is available for purifying, then it becomes expensive.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Aarti and PDC Sushi. I'm leaving dear.
All the best. See you soon, Usha.
Yeah. In my next 1 hour, I'll be in the Chennai.
Okay. See you.
I'm at airport.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's been a great session. Thank you.
Aarti. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, all. Thank you all.
Well done, Aarti.
all
Well
the
done,
speakers for
secretaries.
this wonderful presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks, sir. Thank you.
Not easy for 3 people at that level to make it so accessible for us. I thank all the 3 speakers, really, truly.
Thank you, Aarti and Sudha, everybody.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Udayakumar sir and Hariharan sir have now started on a new collab, sir. After this, or did you know each other before?
No, they
After
just
this.
got introduced only.
Yeah, I noticed that. Okay.
And great collaboration is going on now.
Yeah, oh, that's great, no? So, best wishes, sir.
With everyone's permission, may I end the meeting?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all for coming.
Thank you. Bye. Good evening.
Well done, Sushi, Aarti, and the whole team. Congratulations.
Thanks, Nalini. Thank you for coming.
Bye. It was a good session. Worth understanding. Plenty of things I know about.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Daganna.
Thank you.